3-year contract extension, how does that feel?
Feels great, obviously, to have some security for my family and myself, and we're organizationally excited. It's a new phase from where we started to where we got to, taking a little step back. So now it's a new challenge for Mike and myself and Danny and the crew. And
In a job where there's so much turnover at your level, at the coach level, what do you think has led to you being here now? This is going to be year 13 coming up, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I think the belief from Wade early on, and Mike and myself, that where we are organizationally, that we had a chance to grow, and then the success. I mean, the only way to your point, is to have some sustained success, and we've had that. I think that's about as simple as it gets, honestly, in our line of work. You have to win.
What's your assessment of the season that you all had?
It was disappointing. The bar that has been set organizationally is 4 years of winning the West and 5 years of Grey Cups. To not sustain that, it feels like a letdown and a step backwards, and it was a step backwards. And organizationally, we have to accept the fact that it wasn't as good as it needed to be this year. And how do we get back to not let it take another step the wrong way? Let's get back to competing for the West and getting to Grey Cups.
Are there things that popped to you as to why it was disappointing, in your words?
Yeah, I guess the big one is the number of quality wins that we had. Like when you look, 10-win season and making the playoffs is okay, but the thing that jumps out for me is, we didn't beat a Trevor Harris-led team. We didn't beat when Vernon played. We didn't. Davis Alexander, we didn't beat. You look at the good quality wins of, all right, this team looks like early in the year when we beat BC, when Nathan was playing, and when Bo came out here and we beat a Hamilton team. So we had 2 good wins, but it was just too inconsistent, even on some of those other wins where it was, okay, we snuck those ones out. So you could tell we were grinding and we were fighting and we were working, but there just wasn't the sustained level of quality play throughout the year. I think was obvious for everybody.
When you look back at what you did in free agency in advance of this season, do you look back and think, right decisions, but didn't work out the way we thought, wrong decisions? How do you view it?
Yeah, you'll obviously, when we've had that with the uncertainty of where things were moving forward. We spent some time a little earlier than normal of looking back at the decisions you made and why you made them, and did they work out and did they not work out. And free agency can be a gamble, and this, for obvious reasons, some work out and some don't work out, and that's the reality of free agency when you start allocating your funds there.
Sure. I have a million questions.
Yep.
How's it going, Kyle?
Good, John. How are you?
Doing fine. Taylor Elgersma, what can you tell us about his potential future with this club? What's he doing now, and do you expect him here and when?
Yeah, I mean, Fred Weinert's his agent, and I saw him in Packers camp this year, and he looked good and can sling the ball. I think they're just waiting, like a lot of young players that get a taste of that NFL. I think he's going to maybe hope throughout the course of the rest of the year that someone's going to bring him in for workouts or sign him or things like that. So we're still organizationally optimistic that we'll see, but I don't think that's going to sort itself out till after February 1st when all those future contracts get signed. I think that's their prime objective, John, is to hold out and try to get another NFL shot, and we'll just kind of wait and see what happens.
But you're optimistic he would sign in the CFL?
100%, yes. Nothing's 100%, but yes, I am optimistic if by February, when that sort of futures contract window closes for opportunities for guys, I do believe that they would be happy to come up and start playing in the CFL.
I want to ask you about Danny McManus. There's reports that he's received interest from Hamilton. Obviously, you guys had someone in your organization become the GM last off season. Can you provide any update on that?
Yeah, Danny will be back. So
back here?
Back here, yeah. Sorry,
okay.
But yeah, Danny's back in Winnipeg. Obviously it hasn't been out yet, but Danny and I had we've talked the last couple of days. So yeah, he'll be back, and we'll start filling out kind of the rest of that side now sooner rather than later, I hope.
Zach, I want to ask you about his contract. Obviously, he's under contract for next season, reportedly around $600,000. After a second season in a row with only 17 touchdown passes, do you still see him as that $600,000 player, or do you think that might be something you look to renegotiate?
Yeah, we've never been big on renegotiating. I mean, Zach's earned his contract. You know, we led us to all those Grey Cups and playing at a high level, and you know, we need to do better of surrounding him with better support for him, because you saw flashes again this year where, you know, he's still a guy that can get her done out there. We need to surround him with better support.
Okay, last one for me, then I'll pass it along. Adam Bighill had some criticism when he left about communication. Kenny Lawler as well. Obviously, you're free to share your side if you'd like. But my question is, with some of that criticism, do you plan on maybe tackling or changing some of the way you do your communication or handle your off-season business?
Yeah, you know, when players, particularly players that you've had success with and are really tied to this organization, there's going to be some hurt feelings, some bad blood, whatever you want to say. So I'm not going to get into the specifics. And yes, John, like my wife reminds me, I can do a much better job of communicating. So I can't get away from that. So yes, I will work on it, John, just like I tell Jacqueline, I will work on communicating better. But, you know, changing the way we do things, no. I just think it's unfortunately a cost of doing business when situations like that arrives and it doesn't work out for the organization or the player.
Kyle, Kenny Lawler made it known that he wanted to be back here. Is there anything you would have done differently with Kenny? He said it wasn't until the day before free agency started that he got an offer from you guys. Yeah,
so Kenny's a very emotional young man, which makes him really good on the football field. I deal with the agent on that sort of stuff. So, you know, the agent and I did, you know, it wasn't the day before free agency. It was, you know, we had lots of talks and you know, I think we beleaguered this point way back in February and it did not work out. And, you know, Kenny went on and had a great year it was very similar to the first time Kenny left in Edmonton, where we thought there was a decent number and another team came in quite a bit over the top, and it was like, okay, good for you and your family. That's awesome. And it was kind of remind me of Edmonton a few years back, to be honest, the same situation.
I think a lot of fans kind of have this narrative about this season that you guys didn't go all in. And all in is kind of a strong word, I guess. But, I mean, you guys were hosting the Grey Cup this year, off of 5 straight Grey Cups, and just the moves you guys made in the offseason and whatnot, fans just felt like you guys didn't kind of put together the best team that you guys probably could have, I guess. Just what would your response be to people who think that?
Yeah, I guess you know, and Mike has said this, I've said this, the idea that you go all in when you're hosting, I don't think is accurate. I think you try every year to put a roster together and put a team together that you think can win the Grey Cup, and this was no different. It obviously didn't work out this year.
Where do you guys go from here? Zach isn't getting any younger. The old line isn't getting any younger. Willie's 34. A couple other important pieces that are getting up there in age, obviously. You have some young pieces in-house and whatnot, but how do you guys get this team back to being the Grey Cup contender? Because on the outside, it doesn't seem that simple.
Yeah, you know, I've stood up here and kind of complained through the years of the one-year contracts, but the benefit of so many free agents in our league from year to year that you saw Calgary was last, I believe, last year, and then they flipped their whole roster around and made a bunch of, it's easier to do with one-year contracts to be able to make a quick change for your roster, more so than other leagues where once you're kind of in that situation you're in, it takes a while to get out of it. So what we need to do now is sit down and take a deep breath and get all the decision-making pieces organized, and then, you know, you're 100% right, figure out how do we fix it. And as I just said, it is a little easier, quick fix, for lack of a better term, in our league when there's so many players on one-year contracts every single year.
where do you guys go from here with Dalton Schoen? Does he want to keep playing? How do you evaluate a guy after a couple of serious injuries?
Yeah, well, obviously with the injury to all players that finish the year with injuries, we'll need to get more medical reports and talk to our trainers and our doctors before any sort of decisions on those guys are made moving forward.
What was last week like for you? Obviously, Mike was in Toronto talking to the Argos. The Ticats were interested in talking to him as well. Were you knee deep in negotiations with Wade regardless, or were you kind of hanging in the balance till Mike was figured out, or just what was that like?
No, Wade and I were mostly discussing potential options. If Mike decides to do this, what's kind of some plans? If he decides to do this, what's some plans? So there was a whole lot of discussions going on. Possible scenarios, obviously the number one scenario was that Mike would want to come back, but you need to have sort of at least discussions. Well, if Mike doesn't come back, what's the next step? So that was more, kind of the discussions Wade and I were having last week.
Last one for me. Brady Oliveira stood up here a few weeks ago and said, obviously he loves playing here, but he wants to go somewhere where he knows he could win Grey Cups, and he made it pretty clear that he wants to, get paid what he deserves as well. So just what can you tell us about, your negotiations with Brady? What's that going to look like? And
Yeah, I mean, it'll be like all of the players and their agents. Their agents all believe that they're worth a certain amount, and it will be back and forth. But yeah, Brady's an outstanding player, big part of our community, and do we want him back 100%? And now it's a matter of what does that look like, and the process will start, and it probably won't be quick, but we want Brady back.
Quick follow-up on John's about Elgersma. What do you see in his future with you?
Well, we hope he's here. Like, I guess if he comes, yes. It's a unique one with a player with that physical ability. You see a lot of players with physical ability, but he comes up here with a whole pedigree of Canadian football, which is a little bit different. He runs hard. He's big. He's athletic. He's got he can zing the ball. He's got it all. He just needs to get up here and get reps and play and play against this level of competition. And it's tough. We were hoping they would come up for a few weeks at the end of this year to start learning, because training camp is quick and it's hard on any new player, let alone players at that position. So the expectations are, we think he can be a real good football player in this league, but you have to temper those until he gets in a training camp and starts playing against, this level of players on the Canadian field.
How do you kind of sense it potentially working? Like, would he come up here to be an understudy for a year, or would he? How do you see that potentially working financially and all that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the quarterbacks, American Canadians, are when they come up here, they understand it is a whole different world up here. They want to come in and play right away and compete, but I think they understand there is a pretty steep learning curve that they need to go through, but you never know until you see it. You got to get him up here and see how he processes and see how he picks up the playbook and go from there.
And following up on what Taylor said, that the sense that the organization didn't do everything it could to play in it, to get into its home Grey Cup. In retrospect, what would you change? I mean, other than the result, but decision-wise, what would you change?
Yeah, I don't want to get into that, because you can second guess. When you don't win the Grey Cup, you could go back to the Grey Cup law. Unless you win that final game, every organization is going to look, and you can second guess and decide what we should have done personnel-wise, play calling, all roster, the whole bit. So it's it's kind of a slippery slope when you start looking at why you didn't win. I think bigger picture-wise, we just need to say we need to be better. Like, we need to be better all around and get better across the board.
At free agency, right around then, the cap went up, and you were clear that you guys were still operating under the old cap. Why?
There was a lot of uncertainty around that time. I mean, you wake up and all of a sudden the cap's gone up, or has it? And there was a lot of uncertainty. And I think what you saw across the league, there was no massive amount of spending in that week, or teams didn't dramatically change, anything, I think what you saw as the dust settled, you saw a lot more bodies in the building around the league, like a lot more one-game injured guys. I think teams were able to have, right or wrong, you were just able to have more guys in the building. And that was pretty standard across the league when you look at the numbers after the year. I think most teams were operating the same way, that you did not see a massive influx of spending when that came out.
Right.
But I think as the year went on, you saw teams spend it on having more guys around.
It almost sounds then like everybody agreed, let's not go to that cap immediately.
No, I think it was just, as I said, I think there was just so much uncertainty, and from a business standpoint, it's, right, are we, who's signing off on 400,000 around, and, you know, there was some there was some, is it all going in the cap? What are the players going to do with it? I said it was an interesting time right at free agency that I just think nobody had the opportunity to go and spend all that money within 24 hours.
Yeah, but maybe not within 24 hours, but like Wade obviously set a budget for you guys, right?
Mhm.
Maybe it didn't include that extra chunk.
Right.
But, you know, why was there not some heated debate? I mean, you guys are the most profitable franchise in the leagues, and you're hosting the Grey Cup, so why was there not some heated debate? Let's do more, let's spend more.
Well, I mean, at the end of it, we'll be spending to the cap, and at that time, all the agreements were done. You know what I mean? And like, every player had an agreement, and the agents weren't going around shopping and saying, I'm not going to honor this. Let's start talking again. So I just think that there was quite a bit of uncertainty, and
It wasn't handled well then, obviously. I mean, there shouldn't have been that uncertainty, right?
I agree. Like when it finds out of the timing of that was very peculiar,
Yeah.
very, very peculiar.
This was a once-in-a-career shot, probably, right, to get your team into its own Grey Cup. You ever think what that would have been like? What that would have added to Grey Cup week?
Yeah, I mean, it was what was it, since 2018 was the last time we weren't part of a Grey Cup week, so it was a little depressing, to be honest with you.
And you're at home.
Right, yeah, and yeah, it was, I don't think it would have mattered where it was, to be honest. It was, yeah, it was depressing to have it right. I guess if it was at a different city, it wouldn't be right in your face, you know, the disappointment, but,
Yeah.
you know, yeah, it was certainly disappointing.
Yeah. How you gonna look back on it, you think, when you're done? How you gonna look back on this year?
Hopefully, we look back and say this was a good turning point for the organization, that we're able to now realize we had a good run, and no arguing that we took a step back, and now let's reset and get back. And so I'm hoping that this starts that process.
Is that, see a major rebuild? Would that be the right word?
I don't know, rebuild, people use that term, but certainly we need to accept we weren't good enough. And if you want to say rebuild, make changes, we need to accept that fact for what we talked about earlier and say, yeah, we need to be better.
Kyle, I've been curious on why the dramatic change from last year to this year and how you approach the 6-game injury list.
Our six-game injury list this year, our numbers were identical as our 7-year average. I'm a big guy on the 6-game injured list around the league and what teams do and don't do. So our numbers this year were on point as our 7-year average. Okay, the difference was our 1-game numbers were substantially higher, and as to why once the, you know, it was no different than that one year when remember the CBA and the cap went up. I don't even know what year that was, 20 or 21, something like that. The CBA gets done, the salary goes up right at training camp. So now that year, everybody had a bunch of cap space for guys on the 1-game injured list. So our 6-game was no different this year than years past. Our 1-game was higher than, for those reasons we talked about with Paul.
Your approach to it seemed to be different, though. Like last year, Big Hill went on 6-game for 1 game 2 times. Stanley was on 6-game for 1 game. This year, Peyton Logan was on 1 game for 9 games, right?
Yeah.
Mike Benson, multiple guys spent 6 games or more on 1 game when they weren't practicing, and it was just curious to see it develop.
No, sometimes with those, it's each individual case. I mean, those hamstrings with Peyton sometimes can linger, and you think it's going to be with where he got hurt, we were hoping we were going to see him sooner rather than later, and it just kept lingering and lingering. So it's, you meet with the doctors and you meet with the training staff, and you try to make a good decision as far as, do we put a player on the 6 game, do we put a player on the 1 game, and go from there.
But last year, Big Hill twice was 1 game on the 6 game.
Mm-hmm.
Was that a mistake? Is that?
Well, it's all part of the, I get certain times, like when you think a player might be, we had it a few times this year where certain players, you have to wait and see, so you put them on the 6 game, and then you have to wait a couple weeks. How does it feel? Could it be surgical? So we had a few of those this year, and it's probably the same thing. If there's a chance that it could be a surgical injury, but we need 2 or 3 weeks to see how it responds, and is the player going to work through it, and whether brace it up or whatever. But if the alternative is, boy, this could be if it doesn't go well over the next couple days, or couple weeks, I should say, then we're going to shut it down and go 6 games. So that's, I don't recall specifically, but if a player's been on there for a short amount of time, it's this could be bad. So let's put them on the 6 game and evaluate in a couple weeks, because if it's bad, it's going to be real bad.
It felt like, and please do correct me if I'm wrong, but last year you would use the 6 game to stay under the cap, and it felt like this year you were using the 1 game to get to the floor or to make the cap look better.
Yeah, that's fair. And again, when the cap, just like I referenced, when the cap goes up after, essentially after free agency, then you're left with a little bit more cap space to have bodies in the building.
The healthy scratch guys. Yeah. The Dylan Mitchell, how Dylan Mitchell was used, were the front office and the coaching staff in alignment on how Dylan Mitchell was used? Like when Joey Corcoran started that game instead of Dylan?
Yeah, I think certainly everybody was on board when Dylan came here, and the reports were great, his film was good, and showed up and he just struggled. I mean, I don't want to get into the specifics, but yeah, Dylan struggled. It is what it is, and yeah, the player, he struggled. He struggled having the productivity, getting targets, the whole bit.
Kyle, have any players in exit meetings indicated that they plan to retire or don't plan to be back?
Nothing yet. Like I said, it's just been a little hectic right now, so nobody said that. No one came out and said, I'm done playing football, so.
And obviously, you guys are together another 3 years after 12 years working together. I'm curious, how would you describe your working relationship with Osh?
It's good. There's less yelling and screaming. Years back, every decision would be, and now we kind of know, and we sort of, we have, every discussion no longer has to be a yelling match of points getting across to each other. We're able to discuss our issues and plans, and so it's said we went out and had a good lunch right after all this was sorted out, and said it's an exciting time for us to try a new chapter in this of where we're at, and I think we're ready for the challenge.
I'm just curious, from when you started this job to today, guys like Stanley are killing it at 39, Trevor Harris, the quarterback, at 39, Zach's at 37. What's it like managing in this era where guys get older than we're used to? When you were a kid, guys didn't play till this age, but now you have to kind of judge their aging curves, which have very clearly changed in the time that you've been the GM.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to how, you mentioned the older guys are looking after themselves. That's all changed. How good these guys are, the training staffs do a great job with them. Their nutrition, their training has really changed, and they're able to play for a lot longer, and they're good. Trevor Harris, he looked awesome out there. Stan played played perfectly solid left tackle out there this year. So it's, they're smart, and what they may lose a step here or there physically, they know what they're doing, and those are two real good examples of guys that are still playing at a high level.
Does it make your job harder or easier? I don't know if you have any take on it. It's harder or easier.
No, yeah, I mean, we certainly try not to look. You look at whether the player's 23 or 33. Are they playing at a good enough level for us to win football games? Is the main discussion point.
I realize Kenny and Dobson and Ford are all big shoes to fill, but the free agents that you guys did bring in to fill some of those shoes, did you guys not get enough out of that group? Could you guys done a better job in free agency last year?
Yeah, when you look certainly at the receiver, I thought Gabe Wallace stepped in. I mean, it's interesting because the guys, certainly the Canadian guys, is an interesting challenge because they're playing on generally their rookie contracts, and then they're getting offered over $200,000. So that is a challenge from a salary cap standpoint of how to replace such good young Canadians. That's the big challenge from a contractual standpoint. And, those guys are really good and got really good contracts. And we've seen that throughout the year. I've stood up here each year and say we tend to draft guys and they do quite well. And then from time to time, they move on and get rewarded financially. And it is what it is.
This last one for me. Why should fans feel confident that this team is headed in the right direction? Because 2021 is starting to not feel so recent anymore. So why should people be confident that you guys can be back to a Grey Cup team?
Yeah, I guess if you're talking about getting back to the Grey Cup, it was last year. We're talking about winning for sure, and there's a difference between getting. But if you're saying organizationally winning the West, we won the West last year. We were 10-8 this year. So the idea that the sky is falling and we're 0-18 and missed the playoffs, that's not the case. We're a double-digit win team with a good core here and a group of decision makers that have been together a while that know how to win, and just trust that we'll get back to winning.
Maybe one last clarification on Kenny. He says it was the day before. You said it wasn't the day before. Can you say when it was?
I don't remember, but yeah, him and his agent and I were talking nonstop about this stuff back in, because there was other issues outside of just the player contract that we were dealing with that needed to be sorted out prior to the new year, to be honest with you.
What were they?
I don't want to get into that sort of stuff, but yeah, there was discussions between me and the agent even through the season to try to get ahead of what was coming.
Did you even consider matching though what Hamilton did?
We
Again,
could,
that goes
no,
back to that salary
yeah,
cap thing. Why not?
yeah.
It was there. The money was there.
It wasn't like Kenny had with that window. They had already had a contract agreed upon.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Cal.